My name is Jeremiah Samsonite. You may know me previously as an exotic dancer, a convolutionist, and an exotic dancer. But today, I come to you with my most pressing matter ever, the most serious matter I have ever brought to this channel, and that is the Make Noise Strega. Today, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as I am here as a lawyer, we are putting the Strega on trial. What for, you may ask? That is a very good question. The Strega, I will prove to you in the course of this video, is not a musical instrument, ladies and gentlemen. It is a tool of outer gods, a tool of what you might call Satan or Baphomet. It is indeed a tool of forces of evil beyond mortal comprehension. I also hope to prove throughout the course of this deposition that Tony Rolando, owner of Make Noise, and Alessandro Cortini, musician, artist, and provocateur, knew what they were doing when they created the Strega as a tool to enslave us as a species. I know this may seem outlandish. I know this may seem hard to understand. I know I may seem preposterous. But I promise you, by the end of this video, you will become a believer. I would like to begin with the creators of the Strega, Tony Rolando and Alessandro Cortini. While researching the manual for the Make Noise Strega, I found quotes from both Tony Rolando and Alessandro Cortini that are quite frankly shocking. Rolando points out without any hesitation that what they have created here is an alchemical device. Alchemy, the tool of the devil, practiced regularly by some of the most famous Satanists like Alan Moore, Rob Moore, Demi Moore, Alan Moore, Give Me More, Aleister Crowley, Rob Zombie, and many others who seek to invoke the powers beyond the void. As you can see on the Strega itself, it is covered, festooned with alchemical symbols. Touching these will affect how the Strega works, stealing your very life essence as it makes its tones. This is a device meant to steal your soul, and that's just by touching it. A very telling quote from Cortini himself says, he doesn't remember how and why the Strega was made. From this, we can deduce that him and Rolando got blood drunk in an orgiastic ritual meant to call upon Baphomet, to seek unimaginable power. What they got instead was the plans for Strega. Through the pact of creating the Strega and selling it to you as a musical instrument, it is very likely that Tony Rolando and Alessandro Cortini have been granted immortality and possibly the ability to shapeshift. So let us recap before we get into what Strega sounds like, ladies and gentlemen. We have two men practicing the dark arts. This we can agree on. They perform a blood ritual, probably orgy-related, and the Strega is bestowed upon them. They cover it with symbols meant to create dark magic when you interface with it. And then they sold it as a musical instrument. We're just getting started, but I think I've already made quite a point here. Next up, unfortunately, we have to listen to Strega. And ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be shocking. I, unfortunately, have had to listen to Strega while preparing for this deposition, and I can tell you that the experience is not pleasant. One of the reasons that I took this case is because when I would go on YouTube and watch demos of the Strega, all I would hear were sounds that made my teeth rattle. They made my blood scream. I would bleed from my ears and from my eyes. And I would lose hours of the day every single time I heard this device. And unfortunately, I must now put that upon you. Let us understand the panel of Strega. The first control that we unfortunately have to touch on Strega is activation. I will turn down the blend, and I will turn down tones. Here is a tone. It can be pitched with the tonic knob, but we're not going to touch that right now. With activation all the way up, we hear a steady tone. If we turn the knob above activation, which has this very evil symbol next to it, we will hear that activation is weirded out. You can feel the agitation start to take hold, but it's going to get much worse. Above the tonic knob, we have the tonic agitation knob. Now the very pitch that we are supposed to accept as part of reality has been mutilated and continues to be mutilated as we listen to it, as well as the on-off of our tone. As we turn the tone to the right, you'll hear that we go through a number of waveforms, none of which are pleasant. I will turn down the agitators here, and we listen to the tones on their own. Very disturbing. To the right of this, we have a delay section. This delay section seems to share a lot of sonic characteristics with the make noise herb verb, which leads me to believe that herb, behind SoundHack, the Morphogene Mimeophone, the herb verb, and recently the Spectrophone, is also a Satanist, or one with the void in some way. As we increase the blend, we will begin to hear the delay. I can turn the time knob, and we can hear the void approach. There's a decay knob, which can be turned all the way to the right to create a forever feedback, sort of pulling you further into the void forever. If you turn absorb all the way to the right, there will be no absorption, as in all the high frequencies will continue through. If you turn it to the left, less of these will continue through. They will be absorbed, like your soul, into the device. Here is a filter. It appears to be a bandpass filter of some kind and only affects the delay circuit. Above the time knob for the delay, we have something that feeds a sub-oscillator into the time of the decay. You will begin to hear strange variations in a rhythmic pattern. This is because this sub-oscillator is now modulating the time of the decay. It is very freaky. On the right bottom, we have what is called the agitation generator. This is basically a function generator with rise and fall and a shape and a time. It can be triggered. By turning up the plus minus here for filter, we will hear that this agitation generator is normaled to the filter. This sounds a lot like a turn signal in some sort of hellstorm. With all of these controls combined, we create what seems to be complete and utter chaos. However, through repeated listenings, I have found that there is a pattern to this chaos, an evil, despicable signal which, upon consuming for lengths of time, will create mental distress. This is by no means an accident, ladies and gentlemen. The purpose of this device is to cause distress, and therefore cause your soul to be agitated into the void where it can be slurped upon by the void beings. Unfortunately, I can feel them slurping on me right now. I pray that the YouTube compression ruins the full fidelity of the signal so that you are not trapped in some way with the void creatures who do so love to slurp. The next section of this video will be dedicated to example patches found in the Make Noise Strega instruction booklet. I believe that these example patches represent stages of a ritual planned by Cortini and Rolando to invoke the next stage of void slurping. We must begin now. As if to drive home the satanic nature of this device, the first patch is called Welcome, and is designed by Alessandro, who I believe has the deepest connection to the void creatures who slurp. This patch is described as an evolving pitched textural mass. One thing I have not mentioned up to this point is that these gold circles and squares act as contact points for your very body. By touching them, you begin to influence the Strega. Do you think that this power comes without some form of retribution, some form of payment from you? This is how they find you. This is how they get inside you. They know the shape of you. When you do this, you can hear them. They slurp. Do you hear them slurping? I feel them slurp. Feel them slurp. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, we must continue to the next patch. Our second patch is entitled Movement and has also been designed by Alessandro. In this patch, the main movement comes from the looping attack decay function generator with 0 attack, modulating the filter cutoff, starting with absorb at 0. Decay, absorb, and mix are played in real time to evolve the texture as needed. You can see in this example, they encourage you to touch and play with the device. They say to evolve it in real time, but I will argue that that is not safe. Unfortunately, we must do it. But I feel like I want to touch it. I can't stop. The next patch is called Rhythm, again designed by Alessandro. He says, in this patch we have a drum-like feedback evolving pattern. The VCO is modded by the sub-VCO, creating a kick-like pattern. The activation knob adds a hi-hat percussion-like part to the rhythm. Here is the kick, the pulse, meant to draw you in like a heartbeat, the heartbeat of the beast. As we increase tone, we hear the upper layers of the firmament found under the darkest mountain. You can hear them chomping. They want to feed. They want to feed. They wish to feed. They want to feed. They want to feed. They want to feed. This next patch is possibly the most disturbing, as it lays bare the intentions behind Strega. This patch is called Breathing, designed by, again, the master Satanist and void creature, Alessandro himself. The looping envelope is modulating the delay time lightly, along with the delay mix, using a stackable cable or molt. Manually play with absorb, decay, and tones to vary the creature's emotional states. Now, Alessandro, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the creature's emotional states? What are you saying that the Strega actually is? Ladies and gentlemen, this next section might be the most disturbing, but for you to understand why, I must read to you from a book which has been published under the genre of science fiction. However, I do not believe it to be. I believe that the book Carrier Wave by Robert Brockway is not fiction. I believe it describes what Strega is and what Strega does. I do not know how Robert got this knowledge. I do not know how it was published, and the Strega was still allowed to be created. But ladies and gentlemen, if I do not read this passage to you while playing the Strega, you will not understand the full scope of what we are dealing with here. It begins with a deep bass, a rumble like distant trains crashing. It builds slow and inexorable until your ears reverberate with it. It does not vary in volume or intensity. It just is forever. It is alone and unbroken for so long, proud if not arrogant in its resistance to change. And when the tiny cracks finally appear in the uniformity of sound, you're grateful for the release. Little pops and squeals, announcing the chinks in the armor. Then the feature piece comes wailing in through the holes they've punched, a sort of ululating whistle that screams up and down through the octaves, never repeating it, somehow following a logic or grammar. It operates on rules that your mind grasps instinctively. Then, so gently, its almost imperceptible. A static wave sneaks up through the ocean of bass. It is subtle, but not inactive. There are things moving in that static. Fingernails of sand. The sound now so familiar that they began to take on shapes in the blackness of the bathroom. The signal as a whole was a shadowy sphere, so infinitely vast that its depths were incomprehensible. It meant madness to even try, and each aspect of that signal was an entity that lived inside that eternal void, something ancient, and if not malevolent, then apathetic in the cruelest way. They were order, they were chaos, they were fury, and they were sleep. Haruk the order, who wrote the merry, How the rage, and Hymna the slumbering. The prominent whistle at the heart of the signal was all of them and none of them. It was the herald, spreading their word in advance of their arrival. Ladies and gentlemen, I fear I have not been completely honest with you. I brought you to this courtroom today under the guise of a class action lawsuit brought against the Make Noise Company and possibly Alessandro Cortini to prove that the Strega was an instrument of the devil. But that is not why I brought you here. For you see, I am the herald, and the Strega is the signal, and you are now infected.